Hello, everybody, and welcome to AI Powered Woman. This is our podcast. I'm Felicia Newhouse, and I'm joined today by Dr. Madeleine Ley. And we're living in a moment where entire systems are being rewritten: technology, work, identity, and intelligence itself. And women have a rare opportunity not just to keep up, but to really reimagine the architecture of the future. So, this podcast is where we explore what it means to lead in a world being remade with AI and by AI without abandoning our humanity, our intuition, or our deeper knowing. So, our guest today, Madeleine, is a writer, a storyteller, ecological thinker, and creator of the new film, Weaving New Narratives. So, her work really lives at the threshold where science, ecology, and technology meet. And I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you. So, Madeleine, do you want to just give us a quick little introduction and background and what brings you here today?
Yes, great. Thanks for having me. I was recently working at two engineering schools, one in the Netherlands, TU Delft, Delft University of Technology, and Lausanne Engineering School, where I was doing a PhD and then going on to teach and research, always with engineers. But what's sort of strange is that I have only training in philosophy. So, what I'm interested in is these sort of deeper philosophical moral questions about technology, and possibly how we can weave that into the education system in universities for training engineers. But right now I've left the university and I have a little writing cabin I can see through the window here, and I'm
Nice.
working on a book for now.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I love your work, and I love the idea of philosophy and morality and ethics and all of that converging with AI, because I think right now we have to kind of step back, right? We're in a moment in history and there's so much that's happening at once, and these questions are they're existential, right? And they can be scary, they can be exciting. There's a lot of change. Um, and I think you specifically through your work, you're doing something rare. Like you're really dissolving the binary of nature and technology rather than just simply talking about responsible AI. And this is something that I always find challenging when I go to these AI conferences is it's just, they kind of are just checking a box of like, yep, responsible AI, we got that, we have that session, we have that panel, right? But it's so deep. Like the well is so deep on this topic. And it really goes back to human nature, the planet, our species as a whole, and these really deep existential questions of what are we doing with this moment and how are we shaping our future. So, what do you think that binary has cost us culturally, spiritually, and ethically? The binary of nature versus technology.
Oh, yes, this is a beautiful question. So many pieces there. And I want to go back. You said the phrase responsible AI, and us, we would know in the field also, you just hear a lot about sustainable AI.
Yeah.
And I've been in a lot of situations over the last 6 or 7 years working with people or just at conferences and these sorts of things where what I have noticed is that uh, we so many of us take the technologies that we have today for granted, like as if they're I hear this phrase all the time, like, well, AI is happening in this way, then we better just participate and make it a little bit better. So let's make it
Yeah.
responsible. Let's make it sustainable. But what I found is that then we're not having, when we focus on these, it's almost like these are these band aid fixes on top of something really, really deep.
Yeah.
And the deeper conversations that are the slower conversations about, what is this, what are these kinds of technologies we're building, and why do they take the shape that they do? Why
Yeah.
is most AI developed with a prioritization of efficiency or optimization instead of beauty or compassion or honesty? There's
Yeah.
AI could look like so many ways. I think people forget that.
Right.
Like it could look like anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But
a
what it
tool.
does is like, yeah, it's like it's optimizing our schedules and like I'm and yeah, it's for this sort of optimization and prioritization. But back to your question is what I think is that there's these deeper questions and these deeper binaries that we need to attend to because we know the planetary crisis. We know about the cost that AI has on the environment. We
Yeah.
know, and you can't say you don't know. If you're listening to this podcast, certainly you know about anytime you type in anything into ChatGPT, there's a huge cost there, environmental. Like, most people do. And so what I'm very interested in is like, why do we keep going? Like, we know this is the earth is being torn up for minerals for this tech to work. Like, what? Very interested. It's what I'm writing about. Like, what? Why do we keep doing it? Um, and like fast and with a lot of investment. And one of the things is that I think underneath so much of this is this binary, as you say, between nature and technology.
Yeah.
So we think like our phones are slick, that we get them in a box, they're clean,
Right.
they don't feel like they're from the earth.
Right. It feels the opposite of nature. Yeah.
It really does. It feels the opposite of nature. And so we don't see it as something that is born of the earth and goes to the earth in its death in an e-waste site too. It's a
Right.
full
It's just
life.
an extension of it, right?
Yeah, and it's earth all the way through. It's not
Yeah.
stopping being earth and then goes to the e-waste state to disintegrate in thousands millennial like long time. So I think that if we were to um, let me say, re-perceive, or maybe even just remember, or that the technologies that we have are the earth, we might slow down, do much less,
Yeah.
and we might have a greater respect for the technologies that we're using.
And where do you think that, I guess, that mentality can be sourced? Where can it come from? Where can it be inspired from? Because there's still such a disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And so there's still that binary. How do you think we can help shape that binary? Do you see openings for people to rethink some of these things and see them more as coming from ourselves, from the earth, and all of that to be connected? Because I feel like if people could somehow mend that gap, there would be greater accountability and responsibility, because it's not us versus that, or that versus this, right? It's all part of one ecosystem that we're all part of and we're all responsible for caring
Mhm.
for.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say something that's said a lot, which is that there's indigenous wisdoms that have been holding that kind of wisdom and that relationality for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now, the tricky part is that I'm not part of a indigenous community. I live in Canada. I'm not part of an indigenous community here. So for me to say, like, oh, let's just throw it on the indigenous people to get our tech right, we have to be very careful there as well. Um, and I've seen that as well in research in the universities and stuff. They're like, oh, just sprinkle a little indigenous wisdom on there.
Yeah.
And then we're doing like this sort of transactional, well, no, not transactional, the same extraction that happens with the minerals in the land is the same knowledge extraction with the
Yeah.
indigenous communities. So,
I
for
can't read about it.
example, where I'm in a very interesting place right now in Canada, where in the far north of the province, the peat bogs, um, uh, the second largest carbon storing place other than, or the second largest peat bog, the other one's in Russia, that is they call it the lungs of the earth, the breathing
Oh, wow.
lands. And they are about to be opened up, pushed forward, because Canada needs to stay on top of its the tech game. So there's a lot of pushback with the Indigenous communities there, who have been taking care and living with this land for a long time.
Yeah.
So I would like to say that those communities should be at the forefront of tech development, but
Yeah.
the forces are very strong against that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it makes me think about just kind of, you know, women's role in all of this too. And, women also carry this inherited knowledge about care and relationship and interdependence, and, qualities that are historically dismissed, but they're desperately needed in technological leadership. So it's indigenous voices, it's women's voices, it's minority voices, it's the global south, right? I mean, so much of the
Mhm.
global south of this planet is ignored in the wisdom that goes into these technologies and just the responsibility around them. So, how do you also see kind of women's voices and women's ecological and relational intelligence in reshaping AI's future?
Oh, this is great. And that's why I'm really interested in your work and the
Yeah.
conference that you hold as well. And I think I want to give you an example from my own work where I was working on looking at the sort of philosophical import of having robots in a workplace. So imagine a warehouse or a grocery store. It was retail specific. And when I started to do my work, and at the time I was this only the one other woman was on the team of about 15 or 18, and then she left, so then it was only me. And I want to focus my entire PhD on care in these warehouses and in grocery stores. And the response was like, what are you talking about? There were like, actually, a few people said, like, oh, well, could you work on privacy or transparency? Like, maybe that's like makes more sense. And those are buzzwords, of course, that we have. And what was so interesting is that when I have proposed care in other settings too, as a focus point, is that care is either dismissed as it's very interesting. At the one hand, it seems like too much to ask for.
Yeah.
Like it's too much. Can't we just like do something else? Because care is like we can't ask for that in a warehouse. And at the same time, it's too much and yet it's too soft. It's like too flimsy, too vague, too feminine,
Yeah.
right? And what I think is so interesting is that care, and you're saying like women's knowledge, and we know, of course, that women do the disproportionate amount of care. Um, is that I was looking at the warehouses, and you see in the states the Amazon warehouses where people are wearing diapers because they have to go to the bathroom, but they don't want to go off the line because they don't want to lose their job. These
Yeah.
horrific situations, and I'm like, you know what? Care is so practical.
Yeah.
Like it's like, did the person pee? Like,
Yeah.
have they
Exactly.
had lunch?
Basics. Yeah.
like, like, is everybody exhausted? Like it's like really, it's like it's not too much and it's not too soft. It's like, is somebody upset? God forbid we talk about emotions. It's like,
Mm.
people aren't, people need to be emotionally well as well. Don't we want that?
Right, which is all part of the macro picture of sustainability, right? Like, how can
Yes.
any of this be sustained if people are breaking down at these mental, emotional, and physical levels and spiritual levels?
Exactly. Exactly. Spiritually, good. So important you bring that up. Has to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
Spiritually, I've sensed this in that work as well, like in the warehouse things. But there's this when I hear people talk about AI. I'm sure you know this. It's like you can hear somewhere there's a deep unrest. And I think what's important about your work is that it's starting to give people language for it, ways of having conversation about it, because it is at I do believe the way that AI technology, I'll say AI systems, let's say,
Yeah.
is really fundamentally shifting something, and humans are feeling that at a deep spiritual level for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think just, I mean, we always use this kind of metaphor of like AI is a mirror, right? It's a mirror
Mm.
for human consciousness and it's a mirror, of the people that are shaping it and creating these tools and creating these technologies and where they're at, just from a consciousness level. So what do you think AI right now is revealing about us right now that we'd prefer not to see? Like, what are our blind spots that you think that are showing up right now in this technology that could give us opportunity to point at them and take accountability for them and transform them?
Mm. Yeah, I do. That's what I think. In many respects, I'm like quite negative about AI,
Yeah.
but I will say that what I like the phrasing of this question is helpful because I've been thinking lately, like there is something being. I like this word disturbed. Like there's a
Yes.
disturbance at the
Yes.
soul level,
Yeah.
deep collective disturbance, and that I hold a lot of sort of hope in, because
Mm.
the mirror you speak of, it's how we slip out of what's being reflected back. It's how we don't
Yes.
fit into the reflection. So what we're seeing reflected back
Yeah.
is this sort of vague. Like, think about all the text we see online that's written by ChatGPT. It's boring. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not written by you. There's no typos, which are actually kind of endearing, like if we're
Yeah.
generous. And so I think what's being reflected back is this sort of muted and uninteresting humanity. And what
Mm.
I think is really interesting about that mirror is that it's a distortion, and we know it's not right.
Mm.
We know it's not right. And so what I hold a lot of hope in is like, what are those ways where like, that's not me, that's not how I sound, like I wouldn't talk to somebody
Yeah.
like that. Like, hold on to those things, because that's very interesting. Follow
I
that
love
thread.
that because it really comes back to a values misalignment, right? And when there's a
Mhm.
values misalignment, that's a disturbance, like you said, and a nudge towards alignment, right? And so, where do we want to grow into? I guess it comes down to like, what are we trying to become? What are we trying to evolve towards? And
Mhm.
so, that's a very interesting question when you start to like, dig down through the abyss of responsible AI, right? And you kind of
Mhm.
get to the core and these like seeds, these like nuggets at the very epicenter of it. I guess
Mhm.
it does kind of come down to alignment or misalignment and what we want to become,
Yeah.
individually and collectively. So, as a philosopher, which I love your angle on this, and I think philosophers right now are really important to bring into the conversation because these voices, um, I think, allow us to identify those misalignments and the alignments of who we want to become and ask those deep existential questions. And philosophers historically, there are a number of philosophers that have believed that evolution is moving toward greater complexity and consciousness and that we are moving towards some form of better in that. um, I mean, do you see AI as accelerating that trajectory or challenging it? Like, how do you think about that from a philosopher's perspective?
Yeah, this sort of evolution towards complexity, or yeah, a higher, not higher consciousness, but greater consciousness.
Yeah.
Um, I'm always a little bit wary about that kind of a narrative of, it's like it is tangled up in this sort of progress narrative, and I
Yeah.
don't. I think humans are great. I really do. And I think that's sort of a shocking thing to say these days, but I really think that it's controversial, I guess. But um, I don't know. I think we already are. If we just we already understand a lot of complexity. We already feel a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I'm quite wary of these sort of like, and then this is going to lead us to greater consciousness thing.
Right, right.
I think there's been a lot of dirty business that have happened with that kind of a narrative for
That's a very good
millennia.
point.
And so I actually think we're, you know, radical statement. I kind of think we're fine the way that we are, and
Mm.
we can. And I think we know how, we're many ways we're kind of, there's a lot that's been lost. Like, we're maybe not so good at being together, and we're not good at having political conversations and things. But I don't think more technology is the answer. I
Yeah.
think that we're the answer to each other, and that if you go out for a walk and you are quiet more often and find some stillness, and you go in the
Yeah.
forest and these sorts of things, or the park nearby, I think we have sensitivity to complexity already.
Yeah, that's a really great way to look at it because it kind of simplifies it, right? It takes all these complexities and it simplifies them and says
Mhm.
we already have the pieces here, right? In this
Yeah.
present moment on this planet, we have all
Hmm.
the pieces we need to flourish and to reach some form of sustainability in that flourishing. We have
Yeah.
enough resources, we have enough food to feed everybody, we have enough,
Hmm.
to some extent, solutions to figure that out. But it might require dismantling certain narratives or certain belief systems or certain
Yeah.
systems and structures that are becoming outdated. So
Definitely, definitely. I think what I just described, there's some really interesting work on that somebody called a Dutch researcher called Joost Vervoort and Laura Francois, who you also have had on the podcast too. They talk about mystery and awe, and they talk about like
mm,
what kind of infrastructures would we have to have in place to allow for us to be rekindle this sort of connection we have with the universe and
yeah,
with the more than human world and with each other at the dinner table. Like, what sort of things do we need in place? And one of the things we can't have in place is working all the time, and we're stressed, moving
yeah,
from job to job, from meeting to meeting, holding three jobs to just barely make your rent. Like that's not going to work.
yeah, yeah. So in your opinion, what are the like the tangible steps someone could take to start shifting this in the right direction, right? Because that's a lot of the work we're trying to do at AI Powered Woman, right? We don't have all the
Yeah,
answers. We can't possibly have all the answers. We're trying to bring together voices that are diverse. We're trying to, somehow shape this moment into a trajectory that feels like it could get us on a better footing. And what are your thoughts on that? Just for like the average listener who's just like, yes, 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 but like, what can I do? Right? We're in these
yeah,
systems. We feel stuck. We feel trapped sometimes.
yeah,
The economy is not great. Like the technologies are speeding up. Everything feels like it's going so fast that we can't
yes.
keep up, and we just feel like we have to keep up, right? So we're on this like treadmill that's just going faster, and it feels like something's going to break.
Yeah. Yeah, this is such a great question. I have a lot of empathy for that because I also find myself in the same situation. So,
Mm,
I was in this book that I'm writing. I have a whole chapter on something that's called the zeitgeist narrative. The zeitgeist narrative powers so much of our decision making today, and it's sort of this idea that like if I don't. I have to have this AI system integrated into my business because if I don't, then I won't be able to keep up and
right.
have to like I don't want to be obsolete, which is the worst thing in a capitalist economy is to be left behind.
Yes.
I have to keep up. I have to do all these things. And I don't have the answer because I don't know your situation, right? But the one thing I can say is that if you find yourself saying in that sort of like, and watch your body, like that high chest, like panic,
Mm,
shoulders tight. Some people it's more in the stomach. For me, it's like more in the shoulders. But when you find yourself in that hyper, like stress mode, saying, I have to, we have to, and that as if that's the full conversation, take a
mm,
deep breath and 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 take it as an invitation to explore that. Why do you have to? And that's what you're saying about the values alignment. Like what's that, the small phrase we have to, three words, holds a world of conversation.
mm.
So I don't know what you
Yeah.
have to do and what you don't have to do, but I would just watch that phrase.
I love that because it goes back to where we're handing our power over to, right? And
Yes.
how we're finding little pockets of autonomy, right, to shift things just a little bit.
Yes.
Mm. Maybe it comes down to the small moments, right? Not these big sweeping changes sometimes.
It's what I've noticed. Yes.
All right. So, last question. When you imagine the future of humanity's relationship with AI,
Mm.
through the lens of ecology and spirituality and kinship, I guess, what gives you the most hope?
I read an article by it's called Indigenous AI, and it's called How to Make Anything Ethically, and it
Mm,
talked about how in the sweat lodge that was created for certain ceremonies, each piece of the each piece of the sweat lodge would have some sort of like great respect for the materiality, the material, the rocks, the sticks, everything that was included was noticed and given gratitude towards and
mhm,
chosen in conversation with the more than human world, as was the dismantling. And this paper says that this is something that we can do with AI. Why shouldn't it be respect at the beginning and respect all the way through and respect at the end? I think it would be really beautiful to imagine that we could use and hold technologies that had us just a reverence and gratitude for the earth all the way through.
Yeah, that's a really great insight to connect it all together and just remember we're all part of a whole. And yeah, it really goes back to the core of like what we're talking about. What is responsible AI? Like what does that accountability actually look like? Right. And
Hmm.
so you really need to kind of go way out to all these different aspects of how we connect to the planet and how we connect to each other and, ask these more ancient questions too around like
Hmm.
how, you know, indigenous people or tribes that were connected deeply to the cycles and rhythms of the planet, how have they done it for thousands of years? How have
Hmm.
they kept that flourishing sustainable in their communities? And there's a lot to learn there too.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for being part of this conversation. And thank you for everybody who's joined. And if something in our words today really stirred you or challenged you or opened up a new line of inquiry, please share this episode with another woman who is navigating this transition in the AI era. There's so much change happening right now. So these conversations are important to spark new narratives and new ways of thinking. And so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And Madeleine, where can we find you? Where can listeners find you?
Oh, the best place to find me right now is over on Substack, and my Substack is
Wonderful.
called Stirrings.
Great. We will make sure we have a link there too. So thank
Thanks.
you. All right. Thank you, everybody. And remember, the way we shape the future isn't by doing it all alone, it's by doing it together. Thanks for joining.